Imagine opening your eyes to a pale sky just before dawn, your heart already pounding because every sound could mean life or death. You're not in a warm bed, not in a house with walls, not even wrapped in fabric. You're wedged between two thick branches high in a tree, hoping whatever prowled below during the night preferred its meals without splinters. 4.7 million years ago, survival wasn't a challenge you prepared for once in a while. It was the only job you had, and the paycheck was living to see another sunrise. Breakfast wasn't a menu, it was a gamble. You'd scan the trees for figs or berries, sniff them cautiously, and try to remember whether the last fool who ate them had lived to tell the tale. If the taste tingled, you might spit it out. If your vision blurred, well, that was the end of the experiment. Protein was harder. Sometimes a lizard sunning itself was a lucky catch. Though without fire, you'd chew carefully to avoid breaking a tooth on a bone. And yes, there was always the option of scavenging from whatever a leopard had left behind. A dangerous courtesy that meant eating fast and glancing over your shoulder for the rightful owner to come back. Water was even trickier. The clear pool, sparkling in the sun, could be your salvation or your slow demise. You learned to approach quietly, eyes flicking for ripples that weren't made by wind, shadows under the surface that didn't move with the current. You'd scoop a handful, drink quickly and retreat, knowing full well the cramps or fever might come later, but thirst would kill you sooner. Clothing wasn't sewn or chosen. It was whatever stuck to your skin while you slept. Bits of grass, clumps of mud, maybe a leftover strip of fur from an animal you'd eaten weeks ago. Fashion sense wasn't the point. Blending into the earth was your best camouflage, even if you looked like a walking compost heap. Shelter was opportunistic. A cave if you were lucky and it wasn't already occupied by something with sharper teeth. A hollowed tree if you were small enough to fit. A rough pile of branches that might fool you into thinking you were safe. And yet, even the most miserable lean-to was better than sleeping in the open where the stars looked beautiful right up until you heard a twig snap in the darkness. Every living thing in your world was either a potential meal or a potential killer. And sometimes both. Big cats melted into tall grass until they were close enough for you to see the flash of their eyes. Snakes didn't need to chase. They waited, silent and coiled, exactly where your foot might land. Hyenas laughed in the distance, a sound that told you they were already thinking of you as tomorrow's leftovers. Survival wasn't just about knowing what to do, it was about being ready to do it right now. You and your group scanned the tree line constantly, listening for changes in the forest's background music. Birdsong meant the day was beginning. Sudden silence meant something had gone wrong. And if you heard the heavy, deliberate steps of something big in the undergrowth, you didn't need to discuss it. You climbed, you ran, you moved. You didn't waste time on arguments, because those you could have later, assuming you lived. Tools were primitive, a sharp stone, a sturdy stick, sometimes just your own hands, but they were enough to hunt small prey, dig up roots, or defend against something your size. Fire, if you had it, was a gift stolen from lightning or a smoldering tree hit by a storm. It was a warmth against the cold, a light against the darkness, and a guardian against predators, but it was also fragile. If it died, you might wait weeks before nature offered you another spark. Every success was temporary. You found food, you ate. You found water, you drank. You avoided a predator, you lived another hour. But every moment the question returned. What next? Because here's the truth. 4.7 million years ago, the game never ended. The only scoreboard was still being here when the sun went down. And if you were, you counted that as a win. Picture the heart of Constantinople 1500 years ago, a city of marble arches, crowded markets, and the thunder of chariot wheels pounding the hippodrome track. It's a place where cheers and riots erupt in the same breath, where the roar of the crowd is as much about politics as sport. Somewhere in that noise, a girl named Theodora is growing up, the daughter of a man who trains bears for public spectacles. The family lives close enough to the hippodrome to hear the factions, the blues and the greens, hurling insults across the arena. And she learns early that loyalty to one side is not a game. In her neighborhood, a wrong color scarf can start a fight. Her father dies suddenly, and the fragile thread holding the family together snaps. Her mother remarries to keep food on the table, but in the Byzantine world, a widow without powerful connections is on the edge of ruin. Theodora learns that survival here doesn't mean hiding from danger like in the prehistoric forest. It means stepping into the chaos and making yourself too clever, too valuable, or too dangerous to ignore. As a teenager, she enters the theater, not the polished, polite stage of ancient Greek drama, but a bawdy, unpredictable arena where wit, beauty, and nerve are the currency. She becomes an actress in the pantomimes, trading lines laced with innuendo and mastering the art of holding a crowd's attention. To the nobility, actresses are little better than courtesans. To Theodora, the stage is a classroom. She studies the faces in the audience, wealthy merchants, senators, sons, envoys from foreign courts, and learns who smiles, who frowns, and who can't hide their interest. Off-stage, she sharpens her tongue into a weapon, learning to flatter, tease, or humiliate with precision. Yet the theater is unstable, a place where one bad performance, one offended patron, could end everything. In her late teens, she leaves the city under a cloud of scandal, traveling to North Africa with a provincial official who eventually abandons her. Alone in foreign territory, she could vanish into obscurity. Instead, she rebuilds. In Alexandria, she encounters a Christian ascetic who influences her to shift her image, whether out of true conviction or strategic. Reinvention is anyone's guess. The flamboyant costumes and sharp-edged jokes give way to modest dress and a cultivated air of piety. She begins to be seen not as a performer but as a woman of intelligence and restraint, known for charity to the poor and sympathy for women trapped in desperate circumstances. When she finally returns to Constantinople, she is a different player. Entering the same game, her poise, sharp mind, and worldly knowledge draw the attention of Justinian, the emperor's ambitious nephew. The law says men of his rank cannot marry actresses or former courtesans. But Justinian doesn't see an obstacle, he sees a problem to solve. He persuades his uncle to change the law. A quiet line in imperial legislation that tears through centuries of social prejudice. Their marriage is not a fairy tale union. It is a political alliance between two people who understand power and intend to use it. When Justinian becomes emperor, Theodora is crowned Augusta alongside him, not behind him. She sits in council, meetings, voices her views on policy, and pushes for laws to protect women, banning forced prostitution, securing property rights for widows, and making it harder for abusive husbands to abandon their families. The old aristocracy seethes. Chroniclers like Procopius paint her as manipulative and cruel, but these same critics never deny her influence. Then comes the test that could break them both, the Nika Revolt. In January of 532, the Blues and the Greens unite against Justinian. flooding the hippodrome and the streets with cries of victory. It's about taxes, corruption, and legal reforms, but at its core, it's about raw power. The city burns. Advisors urge Justinian to flee. In the palace, panic churns, and Theodora speaks. She tells the court that she would rather die in imperial purple than live without the crown, a line that freezes the room. Her refusal to run steals Justinian's resolve. Generals Belisarius and Mundus trap the rebels in the hippodrome, and when the gates are sealed, the slaughter is swift and merciless. Tens of thousands die. The city is quiet again, but it knows Theodora is not an ornament, she is a shield. In the years that follow, she uses her position to create a refuge for women escaping exploitation, oversees legal reforms, and even involves herself in religious politics, supporting the Monophysite minority despite the Orthodox majorities. Hostility. She navigates court intrigue with the same instincts she honed in the theatre, reading the room, knowing when to deliver a cutting line, when to stand in silence, and when to take center stage, even as illness begins to erode her strength. In the mid-540s, she continues to advise Justinian. When she dies at 48, she leaves behind not just laws and buildings, but a template for how a woman in a man's world can bend the rules until they fit her and make sure the changes outlive her. Fast forward from the dust and danger of the prehistoric savannah and the marble intrigue of Byzantium to the candlelit great halls of late medieval Europe. The roar of the hippodrome has been replaced by the steady pulse of lutes and shawms, the glint of spear points traded for the shimmer of gold-threaded gowns. Here, survival doesn't depend on climbing a tree or spotting a predator before it spots you. It depends on knowing when to bow, when to take a partner's hand, and when to let go. By the 14th and 15th centuries, the great courts of France, Burgundy, Italy, and England had turned dance into something far more than recreation. It was the choreography of politics, a silent language where each step declared your place in the hierarchy and each turn could change your fortunes. Imagine arriving at a banquet where the trestle tables groan under the weight of roasted game. Goblets of spiced wine are being refilled without pause, and the air is thick with the laughter of nobles who know their laughter is being watched. When the music begins, the most important people don't simply get up and dance. They take possession of the floor as though it were an extension of the throne room. The basse danse, the low dance of Burgundy, glides into view. Partners move in smooth, deliberate steps that barely leave the floor, their upper bodies held perfectly upright, as if gravity has been negotiated away for the evening. It's not meant to exhaust, it's meant to impress, to suggest that the dancer has complete control not only over their body, but over their role in society. And while it looks effortless, that's the point. Effortless means hours of practice, under the watchful eye of a dance master who knows that a misstep in front of the Duke could be social suicide. Then there's the pavan, stately, processional, almost like a moving tapestry. This isn't about flirtation, it's about spectacle. Each pace is slow enough for onlookers to count the threads in your sleeve and the jewels on your collar. The order of the line itself is a ranking system. The king and queen lead, then the highest-ranking nobles, then the rest in descending order of importance. In this world, an invitation to dance is a signal. Accepting it can cement an alliance, mend a rift, or spark whispers of romance. Declining it can wound a reputation or make a political statement without ever saying a word. Even the smallest gestures, a hand held a second too long, a bow slightly deeper than etiquette requires, can set the court talking for days. Dance masters, moving quietly in the background, are more than instructors. They're the social engineers of the medieval elite, deciding who looks graceful enough to be placed beside whom, who is ready to take the floor, and who should be kept in the shadows until they improve. The costumes are as much a part of the performance as the choreography. Heavy silks and brocades sweep the polished floor. Sleeves trail like banners. Colors signal allegiance, wealth, or both. The music, played on instruments whose voices can fill a hall without drowning conversation, dictates every turn and pause. And the hall itself is a stage. Walls draped in tapestries depicting heroic battles and courtly love. Hundreds of candles making the gold leaf gleam, every eye tracking who moves with grace and who does not. Beyond the elegance, there's strategy. Dance is where a young nobleman can prove he's as steady in his poise as he might one day be in his leadership, where a young woman can demonstrate confidence without overstepping into scandal. It's also where rivalries simmer to partners vying for the same coveted invitation, to factions watching the same exchange with very different interpretations. And just like in the Hippodrome or the Byzantine palace, everyone is watching. For advantage, the regional flavors of this ritual spread across Europe. Italians bring intricate floor patterns and tempo shifts that keep dancers on their toes. The French refine the glide of the bastonks. The English mix courtly steps with the more playful spins of country dance. Spanish courts infuse their movement with rhythmic footwork and gestures echoing Moorish tradition. Wherever the steps come from, the principle is the same. To move well is to belong. To belong is to have influence. And to have influence is to survive in a world where no one holds their place forever. Now picture the spring of 845 along the banks of the Seine. The mist clings low to the water, muffling sound until a deep, steady thump begins to break through, oars hitting the river in perfect rhythm. Out of the fog emerge the long, narrow silhouettes of Viking ships, their carved dragon heads glaring at the shore, their shields catching what little sunlight pierces the clouds. These are not merchant vessels drifting toward market. These are warships, and they move like an army that already knows where it's going. At the head of the fleet, towering over the others, stands a man whose name will echo through Frankish nightmares, Ragnar Lodbrok. Cloaked in furs, mail glinting at his shoulders, his expression is unreadable. The face of someone who has crossed enough seas to know that the real battle is often won before the first sword is drawn. Chroniclers claim around 120 ships push up river that day, carrying thousands of warriors, each armed with axes, spears, and the kind of patience that only comes from a lifetime of raiding. Villagers along the riverbank see the fleet slide past and react in ways that history has repeated for centuries. Some flee with whatever they can carry, others pray, and a few stand frozen, knowing neither will matter if the ships choose to stop. Paris lies ahead, an island city protected by walls and bridges, a jewel in the Frankish crown. But to Ragnar, walls are puzzles and rivers are keys. The Frankish king, Charles the Bald, gets word before the fleet arrives. His problem is time. His forces are scattered, and the men he can gather quickly are too few to truly challenge an invasion this size. Still, he orders them to confront the Vikings on a narrow stretch of the riverbank, hoping to slow their approach. But Ragnar knows the terrain as well as they do. When the ships run aground in the shallows, warriors spill out in tight shield walls, the impact of iron on wood sending a warning through the Frankish line. The clash is short, brutal, and decisive. The defenders break, the survivors retreat toward Paris, and the Seine lies open. Ragnar doesn't rush. He anchors his fleet to control both channels around the Ildalar site, cutting the city off from supply and escape. Raiding parties move into the surrounding countryside, burning farms, taking livestock, and capturing anyone they can, because to the Vikings, silver isn't the only thing worth carrying home. Inside the walls, panic rises. Markets stall. Food prices soar, and the church bells ring for prayers, as much to steady the people as to reach heaven. A desperate sortie by the Frankish defenders. A gamble to break the blockade ends in disaster when Ragnar's hidden reserves crash into their flank. The gates slam shut again, this time with fewer men left to defend them. Then comes the slow work of siege, hunger gnawing at the city, sickness spreading in crowded quarters, the psychological weight of hearing the enemy laugh and sing across the river while your own children cry from empty bellies. The Vikings, with fresh spoils from the countryside, eat well and wait. They know that every day makes Paris weaker without them spending the lives it would cost to storm the walls. By late March, Charles knows the truth. The city will not hold. He sends envoys under a white flag to negotiate. Ragnar's terms are blunt: 7,000 pounds of silver and gold, enough to fill the treasury of a small kingdom. It's not just a ransom, it's a statement, a story that will travel further than his fleet ever could. The Franks protest, but the alternative is unthinkable. Coins and church treasures are gathered from across the realm, melted down, and weighed under the watch of both sides. When the last measure is met, Ragnar keeps his word. The fleet assembles in tight formation, banners snapping in the wind, shields raised in a show of unity, and sails downriver richer than any Viking leader before him, his legend carved a little deeper into history. Paris is spared, but not without a price. The humiliation stings as much as the empty coffers, and the lesson is clear. Sometimes survival doesn't come from the sword, but from the silver you're willing to give to keep the sword from falling. From the moment our earliest ancestors clung to branches at night, listening for the sound of paws in the grass, to the day Theodora stood in imperial purple and refused to abandon her crown, to the great halls where nobles floated through choreographed steps like chess pieces in silk, to the grey waters of the Seine where Ragnar Lodbrok stared down the walls of Paris, the shape of survival has changed. But the core of it hasn't. In the prehistoric world, survival was measured in hours, in whether you found enough to eat before something found you. In Byzantium, it was measured in influence, in turning scandal into authority and authority into lasting reform. In the courts of the late Middle Ages, survival meant moving through the hierarchy with the same precision as the dance steps that displayed your worth. And in the age of Viking raids, survival sometimes meant swallowing your pride and paying the price to live another day. The tools change: a sharpened stick, a well-timed speech, a perfectly executed pavan, or a chest of silver, but the instinct is the same: to read the situation before it consumes you, to adapt faster than the danger approaching, to use whatever you have, whether it's muscle, mind, charm, or coin, to make it through. We like to think the modern world is beyond all this, that survival is no longer the daily contest it once was. But watch closely and you'll see the same game played in boardrooms, in politics, in culture, only now the predators have suits instead of fur. The courts are digital instead of marble, and the ransom may be paid in information rather than gold. The lesson isn't that history repeats itself in the same form. It's that the human ability to adapt is the reason history exists at all. From the savannah to the palace to the ballroom to the siege, survival has never been about brute force alone. It's about knowing the moment to fight, the moment to flee, the moment to charm, and the moment to bargain. The ones who last are the ones who can do them all, sometimes in the same day. Survival is not a single skill, a single act, or a single era. It is the art of adaptation, and those who master it write the stories the rest of us remember.